What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Stochastic channel. And today we're talking some best ball wide receiver tiers. We're going to be talking some players that are undervalued near the top of drafts. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. This is also all free, as you can see on the screen. Our only presenting sponsor is our very own best ball package, which is free for you guys this season. It has rankings for all the major platforms: Underdog, DraftKings, Drafters. We have tiers for every single position. These videos are giving some analysis on the tiers, but if you'd like written form on every single player that's in the top 250, those can also be found on the site for free, as well as some strategy guides for each individual site you may be playing on. All in the link below, so make sure you check that out. For today's video, we're talking about wide receiver tiers, and we're talking about some players that are undervalued compared to where you can find them in ADP. For the purpose of this video, we will be referencing Underdog's ADP, and we're at the top of drafts, so I just want to highlight there may only be a few spots difference between our rankings and the ADPs. That's just what you're going to get when you're at the top of drafts. We're going to save some of the bigger differences lower on in the board for future videos. So let's dive into this. Our first player is Michael Pittman, and Michael Pittman, I mean, he's set up for an awesome season this year in Indianapolis. First and foremost, we're expecting a full healthy season from Anthony Richardson. Now, a lot of people are probably going to be screaming into the void about Anthony Richardson's health, but this is a player that was absolutely amazing when he was on the field early in last year's season. And when you look at Pittman individually, this is a player that was already 18th in yards per route, and he was 4th in the NFL in total target share. That was 30.5%. Now, they did add a little bit of competition, which needs to be noted. A.D. Mitchell comes into the picture. Rookie out of Texas. He's a burner. He was a second-round pick. Otherwise, it's Josh Downs, who looked pretty good himself, and Alec Pierce, former failure on day 2 of the NFL draft. But, man, Pittman just absolutely set up for another monster season and probably more efficiency. This is a guy that only caught 4 touchdowns. That's insane considering he caught 109 passes and went over 1,100 yards. He was operating more around the line of scrimmage with the Colts, just not being the most electric offense, especially under Gardner Minshew. But that projects to change here. You look at some of the periphery for the Colts, 8.5 win total is solid for this team, and they have a top 3 offensive line. So they might be a little run heavier, but we're expecting the efficiency to rise as a whole for this team. And they threw plenty when Anthony Richardson was under center, so that's not a major concern for me here as well. This is our biggest difference near the top of the draft board in terms of ADP versus our ranking. We have Pittman all the way up as the 18th wide receiver on the board. His ADP is 33.6. A lot of wide receiver heavy positioning in these drafts. Going to our second player on the board, it's DJ Moore. And interestingly, we have Michael Pittman 1 spot ahead of DJ Moore. But that doesn't mean we're not also above ADP on the Chicago Bears receiver, which we certainly are. We have him as wide receiver 19. His ADP is 29.2 on Underdog Fantasy, which is also ahead of ADP, according to our rankings. For DJ Moore specifically, the biggest change here is quarterback. You're going to be moving from Justin Fields to Caleb Williams. And by all accounts, Caleb Williams, generational prospect, one of the best we've ever seen. Now, that also does come with increased target competition. DJ Moore has kind of just been the lone alpha really across his career, even going back to his Carolina days. Now you add in Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze, but basically what we're looking at here is a rising tide lifts all boats. And from an efficiency perspective, Moore was 11th in yards per route last year. He's had at least 788 yards in all 6 of his seasons, and he's never once played with a good quarterback, so that's projecting to change. And he has at least 1,000 yards in 4 of the last 5 seasons. The one time he didn't do that, a little bit of injury concerns were there. The Bears have an 8.5 win total that's heavily juiced towards the over, so this is projected to be a pretty good team. There's a lot of reason to like DJ Moore at the top of drafts, and just isolating him versus his counterparts at receiver. Keenan Allen, for as good as he is, he's aging and he operates around the line of scrimmage. Rome Odunze is a rookie coming out of Washington, so by far the most proven commodity here for Chicago is the DJ Moore. Next up, we go over to Jacksonville, where we have Christian Kirk, our current wide receiver 25, ADP of 43.3. He's been on the rise rapidly this season, which we feel good about drafting early. We've been high on Christian Kirk the whole time. The offense has some changes. They lose Calvin Ridley. They lose Zay Jones. They bring in Gabe Davis, who's a little different than Zay Jones, but, kind of just a one-for-one replacement in my mind. That's not anyone Jacksonville should be counting on to do anything, really. They do add a first-round rookie in Brian Thomas. He was a later first-round pick. So, to me, it's kind of a wash. You trade Ridley for Brian Thomas. You trade Zay Jones for Gabe Davis. The complexion of your receiving core looks pretty similar outside of maybe Brian Thomas has a lot more upside than what Calvin Ridley was providing at that point in his career. Still, you're playing with Trevor Lawrence, who had one of the unluckiest seasons in terms of, like pass interferences and touchdowns that the receiver only got 1 foot down. But Kirk still had 80 targets last year. That was in a year shortened due to injury. He had 2.07 yards per route that tied him for 16th with Chris Olave. It also marked a career best for Christian Kirk playing with Trevor Lawrence here. I don't know if there's a lot more upside to his game considering the neutral moves they made at wide receiver, but this is a pretty safe for him. You look back to 2022 when he was the alpha dog in this offense, he caught 84 balls, went over 1,100 yards, and since then he's been pretty efficient, posting those career numbers themselves. Jacksonville also has an 8.5 win total, a lot of 8.5 win totals in this area, which is solid enough playing with Lawrence again this year. So when you just look at who he's around, this seems like a very safe player with very little warts on the profile is Christian Kirk. Last guy we will talk about today for the undervalued receivers at the top of boards is Chris Godwin, an interesting one. He dealt with the season-ending injury 2 years ago. He's now 2 years removed from that ACL. Last year, we did see the efficiency dip a little bit, 26th in yards per route run. With that said, the target share was also almost identical to Mike Evans. He was at 24%. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin combined for well above a 50% target share in this Tampa Bay offense last year. And he has now had 1,000 yards in 4 of the last 5 seasons. He only fell short of that in 2020, which was due to injury. So Godwin is also going to be changing roles a little bit under new OC. They lost Dave Canales, hopefully getting him back into the slot where he really excelled. There is some increased competition. They do add Jalen McMillan, but most of the early reports from camp suggest that McMillan is battling with Trey Palmer for snaps rather than Chris Godwin. One other little tidbit, Godwin, he's still only 28 years old, so this isn't a player of advanced age. He very well could regain a lot of the explosiveness that maybe was robbed from him after the torn ACL. So there's still hope for him. This is a very productive receiver who, again, has had 1,000 yards in 4 of the last 5 seasons and only didn't reach that mark because of the injury he sustained. But another safe player, Baker Mayfield, was re-signed. Tampa Bay projects for another solid season. That'll do it for us today with the undervalued receivers. Leave a comment. Let me know if you think I miss anybody, if there's someone you think is particularly undervalued. And if you'd like to, you can follow me on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski, available for all questions and anything you might want to ask there. Until next time, good luck, everyone. We'll see you later.